Good morning everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you about something that's very close to my heart, and that is the idea of using emotion in photography. I have several occasions where I've received emails from other photographers that have been negative, I think is probably the right word to use. Bearing on rude and actually quite upsetting. But generally it comes down to the same thing, and that is my chosen style of photography and how they think that perhaps it's not the right way to do photography, especially the wedding photography that I shoot. Now, before we get into this, I have to say that, of course, those of you that know me know that I'm a documentary wedding photographer by trade, which means that all of the images that I shoot are candid, with the exception of the occasional group shot. But everything else is 100% candid. I don't stage anything. I don't ask clients to do anything. I don't ask them to move into the light. I don't ask them to smile or move or do anything. I don't move things in the bedroom around. I don't do anything whatsoever. It's my job as the photographer, to tell the story of the day through photos as it actually happens. Now, of course, that's the way that I like to do things. It's definitely not the only way to do it. I have some very good friends in the industry who shoot in a much more traditional manner, much more editorial fashion, and they do a really good job of it. However, my ambition, I think, in life really as a photographer is to be able to curate memories, curate these really, really tight memories for people. And that always comes down to emotion. I'm constantly looking for emotion at weddings and when I'm photographing my own kids at home and my family photography that I shoot. It's always about human interaction, humanity, and the context of that. The narrative I want to get within my photographs is that of love, feeling, human touch, connection, the ability for people to be able to come close to each other and show the way that they are feeling and capture that in the pictures, that when in maybe 20, 30, 40 years time, when mum and dad, granddad by then, grandmother by then, will be looking at these pictures with their children, their children's children, and even their children's children, and they will be looking back at real moments in time, real connected moments in time, when people came together to celebrate a moment. And actually, the word celebration is important for weddings because by and large it is celebratory. But sometimes there is also negativity in the emotion, and some of the pictures that I take of my own children especially are when they are fearful or when they are doing things that they are uncomfortable with. But I think it's important to document those moments too, because they are part of our fabric, they are part of our memories, they're part of our life story. And when we're looking at those pictures, especially when my wife and I are looking at the pictures of our children, I think it really brings us back to specific moments in time, which are very key. It's very important for us to be able to do that. So I'm going to go through a few pictures on the computer, which I think are some of my favorite ones. The most important thing to remember about this little story is that these pictures that I'm going to show you are not necessarily technically brilliant. They're not necessarily perfect in composition. They're not necessarily perfect in light, and they're not necessarily perfect in the exposure. However, I think for me at least, they are images that tell a story. And that story we're going to talk about today is the story of connection and the story of emotion. I'm going to start this process by talking about a very recent shoot, a family that I photographed 5 or 6 times now. A very beautiful young family, and I absolutely adore spending time with them because they are very, very much orientated around love and happiness and fun. Now remember, I said that not all of the images that I take are going to be perfect, and in fact probably none of them are actually perfect. But one of the things that I pride myself on, I guess, as a documentary photographer is certainly for the family shoots, for everything to be totally organic, totally natural, and totally candid. And this image in front of us is one that I think maintains that integrity. It's not going to win any awards, but what I'm waiting for when I'm looking at this particular picture is for the moment and the light. And then I'm using composition as best as I can, given the other two parameters, to try and make a picture. As a photographer, if you are a photographer indeed, you're probably aware that a great picture will be made up and comprised of good light, good composition, and a good moment. If you can get all three, good light, good composition, and a good moment in a picture, then it's probably going to win you awards. It's probably going to make it into a magazine or on the wall of the client. Now, as we look at this next image, again, it's about the light. We talked just now about light, composition, and moment. And sometimes the moment is the key player. Sometimes the light is the key player. Sometimes composition is the key player. But for me, probably the moment trumps all of them. However, it's really important to understand the light and the pattern of the light and the fall of the light. And in this case, you can see that the light, it's a fairly benign image, but it's a beautiful image. And if I'm shooting it from any other angle, probably I'm going to be fighting against the light rather than working with the light. Working with the light is so important, and understanding the light fall in the room that you're in. Now, as we move forward into the next set of images, it's more of a storytelling sequence. Story is important, of course, in all kinds of documentary photography. And this is a series of images where mum is trying to give daily medicine to the children. And it can be kind of sad, but also it's a moment, it's memories, and the babies and the little girl, they're not particularly pleased, of course. It's medicine, especially the elder one. She knows exactly what's about to happen. But as the sequence goes through, and we're using the light, remember, again, to see the fall off and understand the composition of the image together with that light. And it tells a story, and there's a sequence of images here. Poor little baby there isn't at all happy, but he needs his meds, he's got to have this stuff. And the images are images perhaps that revoke or evoke memories, I should say, of those moments when we're tiny, when we're babies, when we had to do these things. And pictures are strong, and pictures and memories of these times are very powerful to have in a collection. As I said, it's important to understand the light, composition and moment, but sometimes it's just moment. This is a fairly ambitious shot taken on a GFX, and it's just my kids on the trampoline in the garden, and there's nothing about this image. It's technically terrible. It's a little bit soft, it's shot wide open, it's a really tricky type of image to get, especially through the net of the trampoline, but I love it, and there's emotion. It's my kids playing together, they're having fun, they're jumping up and down, they do this all of the time, and eventually this will stop. They're going to get older, they will stop playing on the trampoline together, and I'll have these pictures. It's not a good picture, but I have the memories of it. There's emotion in these pictures. Who cares if it's technically bad? Now, I've spoken about this type of image many times before in various other videos, and I think that, we're talking about emotion, remember, and this is just a boring moment when Albie's suffering with his homework. He's like, oh my god, I've got to do some maths, I've got to do some spelling, whatever it is, and you can just see it in his face. To me it's a beautiful picture, because I have no pictures of me when I was a kid doing my homework. I have none of that stuff, and it's emotion on a very personal level for me and my family. Obviously, you guys at home, you look at this picture and you think, yeah, okay, whatever, but remember, we're talking about emotion, and light is playing its part here also. It's key for this image as well. Remember, in the introduction I mentioned that I'd had some unfortunate emails in the past. By and large, I have a great relationship with the community and a lot of friends in the wedding industry, but sometimes you get this stuff, and like I said at the introduction, it's not a case of whose style is better than whose. It would be a boring world if we were all the same, surely. But you know what, just to answer that particular email, I'm going to show a handful of my favourite hugging pictures. And the fact is, the clients love it. They love these types of images. They're very, very simple. There's nothing difficult about these images whatsoever. However, there is a difficulty in capturing these types of images, because if you're remembering that you are curating memories for people, you're not directing these moments, you're not interfering with these moments, and actually if you just rock up to these particular moments in time and shoot 20, 30, 40, 50 images and hope for the best, then you are definitely interfering with the moment. They will become aware of you. The way that I'm trying to shoot these types of images is by using anticipation, watching for the key people, watching for the movement of them, watching for the sound they're making, the ambition they have to go approach to the bride and give her a big hug, or the groom. And it's very important to understand that the way that people interact with each other during this part of the day is unique. It's very, very precious to them. It's their own personal moment in history. And it's not my place as the photographer to interrupt that. It's my place as the photographer to try and capture that. Typically for these types of shots, I'm going to be behind the bride. I don't want the bride to be seeing me. This is straight after the ceremony, so I don't want her to be too conscious of the fact that I'm there. I'm sometimes going to be shooting from kind of chest level or zone focusing. But if I'm behind the bride, I can pretty much do what I need to do very quickly, discreetly, and move away from the scene without interrupting it. There's going to be so many images of the bride throughout the day. So at this point, I'm capturing the images of her guests greeting her, of that real emotion period in this day. This is probably my favourite time of the day, in fact, and sometimes it can get a little bit disruptive because you'll come out and maybe the bridesmaid or the ushers or the family members will look at me as the photographer and think, hey, so what happens next? When do we start doing the group shots and all the formal stuff, etc.? And of course, that's just not going to happen. It's certainly not going to happen at that point. So in order to try and mitigate that, sometimes I'll just take myself away and move around the side of the church, or just kind of move out of the entire area for the time being and let that kind of moment just start to flow again, just start to see everything to move forward and happen much more naturally. Then I can come back in and start taking the shots that I need. I really love it, and it's important to me, I think, for these types of images, for them to be frame filling images. These are going to be the types of images that I think they're going to love, and they're going to maybe have them on the wall, and they're certainly going to be in the album. So getting in close, using a prime lens, 23mm is my favorite. Some people will use 18, maybe a little bit wider, 16 even, but filling the frame, giving that image a real kind of impact. Humanity manifests itself in many ways, especially at weddings. It's the day of the life for the bride and groom, and all their friends and family are there. It's absolutely everywhere. One of the questions I get asked the most as a documentary wedding photographer is, what happens when nothing happens? And the fact is, there is always something happening, always. If we take and look and observe more, then we will see more. And things like hands, for example, people connecting with each other. We don't need to see the faces. We don't need to see the rest of the context. The entire story is there in that connection between the two people. Hands are so important in our very existence. We use them for absolutely everything, and interacting with each other with our hands is an important part. It's a symbol of affection, and every single wedding has this moment in time, this particular moment when the bride and groom, they will first connect with each other, they'll first hold hands, they'll first touch each other. And as a wedding photographer, we're very privileged to be able to see that. And in many cases, nobody else will see that. But that's the bride and groom's own personal moment in history. That is a moment making for them. And we can capture it as long as we know it's going to happen, as long as we observe, we wait and we watch, and then we can take the picture. A very benign picture can become very emotive just by the shift of an eye. So rather than rapid firing at this point, clack, 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 I'm watching and waiting and hoping that the bride will glance at the groom or the groom will glance at the bride. Now remember, this is the first time they're seeing each other on their wedding day. We're seeing it from the front of the church or from the front of the aisle. Nobody else can see that, and being able to record that in pictures for them is huge. All these things are happening all the time. Even if you think there's nothing happening at a wedding, there's always something happening. You just have to prepare yourself and watch and wait. This is Grandpa's cane. He's just sat in front of me, or actually I'm sat in front of him taking a break. And he stood there and his lovely pot of light lands on his hand and his cane. And we don't need to know the face. People don't need to know that. The people involved in this wedding will always know that that's Grandpa's cane. And when Grandpa's no longer here, that picture will remind them of him and that cane that he had. Remember, we talked about storytelling in emotion pictures too, and this is a picture of the grandmother, or perhaps even great-grandmother of the bride. She's actually being helped out of her wheelchair at this point to give the bride a peck on the cheek. I entered this into a competition and it flunked. No, you should have asked the bride to be looking or move the bride's face to this side of the grandmother, etc. Anyway, that's history, but the fact is this image exists, and this is the follow-up image that I took straight after it. Remember that connection, the humanity, the hands, all of that stuff that comes together. So this is the bride helping the grandmother back into her wheelchair. Now, to some people, that might seem a little bit morbid and a little bit morose, but it's not. There is love, there is affection in those hands.
And going back to the fact that images just do not need to be technically perfect to have emotion in them. This image is terrible from a technical point of view. You know, I have the foreground guy, he's blocking the view. I have somebody on the right hand side. Actually, they're framing it okay, but this is the moment where the groom and the mum interacted with each other for the very first time after the wedding ceremony. I have to make a very snap decision to take that picture. The light is okay, it's not great. The composition is terrible, but the moment trumps it all. Light, composition and moment, but the moment trumps it all in this case. And finally, I'm going to show you possibly my favourite wedding picture that I've taken to date. Look, it's grainy. This was like shot at 12,800 ISO, and I think it was on an X Pro 1 many years ago. But you know, there's highlights, there's things that other people might dodge and burn out, or you know, take away using Photoshop. But really, for me, the only important feature of this image is the fact that those two people look so happy. And isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what photography is all about? Making these memories, or keeping these memories that we can all look back on, we can all reflect on them. If I'm sat there with my wife when we are that age having a dance like that, I will be a very happy man. In this session about light, composition, moment, all of these things that come together to make a good image, to make a very strong image. But really what the subject of this little video is about emotion. And wherever you are, at a wedding or at home or family shooting your family, no matter where you are, there is always something happening. All you have to do is open your eyes and look for it, start observing rather than just, you know, kind of hoping for the best. I definitely believe that anybody can be a photographer, anybody can understand aperture and focal length and all of that kind of stuff and press the button on the top of the camera. But only you or me or the person next to you can see what they want to see. They can observe what they want to see. And actually, the more that I slow down, the more that I observe, the more that I watch, the more that I wait, I think the more that I'm beginning to see.
Okay, so hopefully there were some images in there that you at least liked. If you didn't like them necessarily, then maybe picked up a couple of hints and tips about the way that I try and look for these types of images at weddings. It's all about light, it's all about composition, it's all about moment. Those three things that come together will make a good picture. It doesn't have to be technically perfect, but it has to tell a story. It has to have something that's going to bring the narrative together. And when people look at those images later, they actually really want to be taken back to that particular moment in time. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in again. If you do like the video, please like it, subscribe to the channel as always, and I hope you're enjoying the content, and I shall see you next time.